Hey, what's up guys? The Backlog Brawler is back with Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition map tutorial series, and today is not what it seems like. This isn't a tutorial for massive army battles, but this is a tutorial for what I call super weapons or artillery. And you will see there's just this messy situation here, and as you can see, yeah, I mean, going away from all that bad combat, well, I'm gonna lose in 193 years if I don't turn this situation around quickly. So I am getting overrun, but look what we've got here. I have a spotter spy, and that's going to be pretty important to my super weapon. Let's just put the spotter spy here. And then look what we have here. And in the objectives it says repair artillery reactor to fire. And this is the artillery reactor. Let's get our villagers to repair that. So as we are repairing the reactor, notice what's gonna happen. So let's just put our spotter spy here, and I have been decimated and the wonder is still standing. Look at that. There are some messages here. Fire, fire, prepare to fire. Oh yeah! Artillery spot! Death to the elephants and everything else. Here's some more! Yeah, get a taste of that artillery. Care of your spy. So, we're not yet done, and we're gonna have to do another round of firing, so let's have them repair once again the damaged artillery reactor. And this time, let's go in, let's have the spy infiltrate their base. Yeah, there's still guys spawning from my army. Alright, prepare to fire! 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 Come on guys, spot! Yeah! Artillery! Artillery strike! Take cover! Incoming! Alright, that was real fun. Still not yet done though. Wonder's still standing, so let's just put our spotter here. Oh yeah, and yeah, proceed to repair please. Fire another barrage. So nobody's aware that my spotter spy is the one doing all the dirty work, spotting for the enemy. Here we go, prepare to fire. Take cover. Incoming, they know it's the spotter spy now. They're attacking my spotter spy. Oh, the confusion. Oh, the carnage. Alright. Death to everything, yes. My spotter spy is so proud. Alright. I could play that scenario again and again. But anyway, we'll proceed with just understanding what is going on. Now this is, as you notice, a map editor for a map editor tutorial to do this, just that, a super weapon in the form of artillery fire. So first we do a setup. First, just to make things interesting, we set up a building or a wonder or whatever, so that it's something that we can destroy. We set up some large army battles and such, but of course that isn't required. That's just for fun. That's just to show you how powerful the artillery super weapon is. So the first thing that we have to do, the first trigger, is just a modification of the attribute of a guard tower. So what you do, you create a trigger, create the new effect, it's modify attribute, source player 1, which is you or me, and then do guard tower or whatever building you want, and then I'm just changing the name basically. Do object attributes, object name ID. I change it to, so that's just for effect. And then we're gonna do a change view, basically a new effect to source player 1, just do a set location, and I just click this location right here just to change the view at the beginning of the scenario. Now, next trigger is just a lock gate trigger. Again, this is just for scenario effects, so that, you know, this big army here will just be locked behind, just to demonstrate that the artillery barrage was required to destroy the gate initially. And then the next attribute is the important one, which is, this is actually where the artillery is coming from. Basically, if you take a look at the map, there are 3 green dots here. First is here, there's a siege onager here. And let me select that. Yep, a siege onager, but this is for player 3. Here's another one, and here's another one, basically hidden in the forest. Now, for triggers, it's just a modification of those siege onagers. We're going to increase the maximum range, do a modify attribute against the siege onager, make sure it's source player 3. For the operation, you could do add, you could do set, whatever, but the idea is to just increase the maximum range so that it can fire from anywhere, virtually anywhere in the map, and you would want to hide that in some inconspicuous place so that the artillery is really there. Well, 2 things. First is it makes the artillery seem realistic because there's a delay from when the firing sequence starts and the shells, so-called shells, will drop on the location. And of course, it gives the impression that the artillery is coming from a very far place. It would be very difficult to trace where it's coming from, so it just seems like it's coming down from the sky, but actually it's being launched from a location in the map. Now, second attribute is the max total missiles, to be paired with a modify attribute of total missiles. So really depends on which unit you designate as the artillery. I mean, for me it's siege onager. But if you designate a different unit that typically only fires 1 projectile, then you may need to change max total missiles so that you just for example set it to 5. But what's really important is the total missiles, which will change how many it will fire at a single go. That makes it look like it's firing a lot of missiles or projectiles or whatever. And then another important thing is the attack reload time. So this basically dictates how fast the next attack is gonna come. Now, the problem with the editor is that when you put a quantity here, typically you cannot put decimals. In my experience, you can only put whole numbers. So you would want a small attack reload time, but I mean something maybe less than 1. But to do that, since you can't use anything other than whole numbers here, you do an operation divide. And then for this example, I divided the attack reload time by 20. Whatever the value is, you can experiment, which looks nice, but I did 20 for the siege onager. But of course, if you use a different unit, that would have a different reload time initially, and if you divide that by 20, it might come at a different frequency, so you need to experiment on that. But that will get the impression that a lot of, it's just firing a lot of missiles in one go. The next is the modify attribute line of sight, also very important. You just give complete line of sight to the entire map for the unit, and that's to enable them to be able to execute an attack move, because if they can't see the part of the map and you order an attack move there, they will try, the siege onagers will try to move there first to get visibility, and that's the only time they're going to execute an attack move. So to be able to execute an attack move anywhere and fire on that place, you need to set line of sight to a very large value. The next attribute is projectile unit, and this is where the advanced genie editor comes in. So if you've been looking at my other videos, I use advanced genie editor just as a reference on what the item codes or projectile unit codes, IDs, object IDs are, so that you will achieve the desired effect without using mods, without using scripts. So for this case, you can just open your advanced genie editor and search for your desired projectile. Maybe set the class to 60. That would be the projectile class, and then you can choose which projectile you want to fire. Of course, depending on the projectile you choose, that will sort of change the behavior of the projectiles. For example, if you would choose a laser, that would be a very fast projectile naturally, and it will reach target faster. So for our case, we're choosing projectile number 368, which belongs to which is a bombard projectile, because I think it looks cool. But you can use other types if you want. It would look differently, like maybe if you want to go with a meteor shower kind of effect, then maybe you want to choose a projectile from an onager. That would work. So it depends on what you're going for. And then the next modify attribute is secondary projectile, and this is important because remember, we set the total missiles to 3, which means that the first missile out of the 3 is going to be the primary projectile, and the remaining 2, which completes the 3 total missiles, will be considered the secondary projectile. So this makes it sure that all your projectiles look the same. But of course, you can imagine that you could experiment, that you can make it look not the same, like maybe, for example, set a laser for one type and maybe a bombard for the other, and that's gonna make it that the laser projectile, whether it was the primary or the secondary one, will reach the battleground faster, and it's gonna look different. So yeah, do a set on that. And then the next is projectile arc. This is not really necessary, I just kind of experimented with this, but if you want to change the arc of the projectile so that it looks like it's coming from above or below or wherever, you can do that. There is a big range of values, but I don't think this is too required. I mean, because if you fire a projectile from very far away, then it naturally will approach the battlefield in a from a very high position, I think. But yeah, if you're going for something else, then you may want to set that differently. The next one is blast width, and this is kind of important for depending on which projectiles you're trying out. So I chose 3 because I thought that was the best looking one, but I'm gonna give you an example. What if I set it to 10, and then let's just test that out. Alright, so let's go ahead and rebuild or repair our artillery reactor. So I set blast width to 10. And it's gonna be carnage. Here we go. Firing. Here we go. Here we go. See the trees getting flat? I mean, the projectiles are hitting here, but look at that blast range. Insane. I mean, look. This is where the projectiles landed, but look, the castle is damaged from that attack. So if you leave that as default, it depends on the projectile what its natural blast width is, but it just doesn't feel like artillery if I leave it at default for bombard. I think the blast width is almost non-existent, so I set it to 3 just so it's gonna have a good, I think it's measured in terms of tiles, but it has a good blast radius. And then finally, we disable the unit targeting. So if you notice, this cart here is actually my spotter. Yeah, that's my spotter, but notice that in the game it looks different, but we'll get to that. So we disable unit targeting for the cart, aka the spotter, just so I won't get attacked by red. Right. Now, on to the next trigger, spotter spy, which is this cart here. All we have to do is set a modify attribute to the cart source player 1, which is me. I just changed the name to spotter spy. And by the way, whenever you do object name ID and you change the name, you have to set quantity to 0. Otherwise, if you put other values, it's going to overwrite what you put in the name based on the text ID that's here. The next one is armor. I did try to experiment with armor. I'm not sure if it was doing its job, but anyway, that's not too important. It's just basically to improve the survivability of the unit. Hit points I also set to 9999. I don't know why I put a name here, this isn't required. Do a standing graphic and a walking graphic attribute for the cart, and that's important so that the cart will look like a photon mat. Just so it looks like a spotter and not a cart, because it looks cooler that way. Right, and you don't need to change the attack graphic because it is a cart. So the next one is damage reactor initial. So I just damage this object, the guard tower, and this is in line with the other triggers where firing the super weapon requires a fully repaired reactor. So just at the very start of the game, I just do a damage object, and I set the object to this guard tower here, and I do 1499 points of damage. Depending on your civilization, it may be that your guard tower might have more health, but that's okay. The main point is just have it less than 1500, which is what will trigger the super weapon. So the next one is the Reactor Charged trigger, and notice that there's a trigger looping. Yes, and this is because this has a condition where it checks if the object HP of the guard tower is larger than or equal to 1500. So if it is, which means it's more or less fully repaired, then it's going to activate the trigger fire super weapon, and then the fire super weapon trigger enables targeting for this unit. Now this is important because what happens is there are effects named task object, and what it does is it just you do a set objects on the artillery and do a set location with an action type attack move, and the location that you're gonna set is the cart. So you do a set location and click on the cart. Do not click on the areas around the cart, click on the cart so that it will target the cart itself. That's why we enable unit targeting, because if we disable it, then you can't really do an attack move against it. And then once you're just going to do that for all your artillery pieces, and then do an activate trigger SW cooldown. It's the super weapon cooldown, and just do a send chat, fire, 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 optional of course. Now when you do super weapon cooldown, what you do is you set a timer for whatever time that is. I set it to 15 seconds. So this means that once this trigger is initiated, it will count 15 in-game seconds before doing all these effects, which means so the effects are to disable unit targeting to make it immune again to the enemy because it is a spotter spy. And then we do a deactivate trigger. We deactivate the fire super weapon, and then we do a damage object, which just reduces the HP of the guard tower by 1499, assuming that 1500 is the max health. And then do a send chat, incoming, take cover. So for the duration of the cooldown, it's actually waiting 15 seconds to do the deactivation. So during that time, the artillery pieces in Fire Superweapon would have been firing continuously, and it'll only stop after 15 seconds. So if you want to have more carnage, then you can increase the timer count. If you want the artillery barrage to, last for a shorter duration, then just reduce the timer. And then this is just unlock gate for cinematic purposes. If you let it pass for 100 seconds, this army will be available to reinforce the army, but yeah, not really that necessary. And then just for effects, and this is just cosmetic now, we just do create objects on certain points. So this, I create an elite war elephant and halberdiers on these points here for red player, and I just create some champions and some knights for myself there. And here is a prepare message, which is just so there's a condition here. You create a condition, object HP. So if the object HP is larger than or equal to 1300, which means if this guard tower is almost fully repaired, it's going to send some chat, prepare to fire. So once that's done, it's just 200 HP until it actually triggers the Fire Superweapon. And then finally we have our victory trigger, just to destroy do conditions. And here's a condition joiner, so if both conditions are met, it will trigger the effects. And I just did a destroy object on the castle and a destroy object on the wonder. So if those two things happen at the same time, it'll send a chat, booyah, and it will declare victory for player one. So of course you can mix in the fancy victory message delay with a timer and all that, so up to you, but the main focus of this is just for the artillery. So that's it for all the triggers, and I hope you like the concept and maybe you can use it in your own scenarios. But let me know in the comments if you have some other map requests, how to do something like that without using scripting, without delving too much into mods, just doing the basic stuff. Let's do some interesting maps. Like and subscribe if you will, and see you on the next one. So here I finally treat you once again to another round of this artillery scenario.
Grayton, Estora. Mandatum.
Estora.
ready.
Estora.